If I tell you that something is not my cup of tea, do you know what I mean? Probably not, but I can guarantee that British people know exactly what I mean. And that's probably because British people love using idioms in daily conversations. So today, you're going to learn why they're so important, and I'll even show you some that you'll hear all the time from British people. Alright, mate, and welcome to the BritSpeakPod, the podcast designed to help you understand British life, British culture, and of course, British English. So, let's get cracking. Hey up, mate. How you doing today? I'm not too bad, thanks for asking, and welcome to episode 005 of the BritSpeakPod, where today we're talking about British idioms. But before we get into all that stuff, if you're new around here, my name's Dan. Nice to meet you. Do me a favour, subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you're not new here, welcome back. It's nice to see you again. So today then, we're talking about British idioms. So this week, I was having some lessons with students and we got talking about idioms, right? And I actually really enjoyed these lessons because I really like idioms. You know, idioms are phrases that people use to show a deeper meaning. And it's kind of an interesting way to express yourself. Every language has got idioms, right? The most famous idiom is like to kill two birds with one stone, you know, and this means to achieve two results with one action, right? And it's kind of useful to express this, but every language has got some variation of this idiom. And they're just a colourful way to express yourself when you're talking in English, right? And I love idioms. I'm a big fan. And I think most native speakers are. Even if you think to your own language, there's probably idioms that you use every day that everybody knows what you mean instantly. And you don't have to explain some deeper meaning. Everybody just gets what you're trying to say in a simple phrase, right? So that's why I really like idioms. And I was talking to some students about some really common ones, and I thought, maybe this would be a good idea for a podcast episode. So that's why we're here today. But, you know, idioms are not easy for language learners. I usually tell students, don't worry about idioms until, you know, you've already got like the core 5,000 vocabulary down. Until you get into like upper intermediate kind of level, you don't really need to know idioms. And just like everything else that I teach you, you don't need to use these if you don't want to, right? They're just there because you will hear them from time to time. If you're communicating with native speakers, you're going to hear these things. And if you don't know what they mean, you're going to get confused, and that means your confidence is going to go down, and it's just not good, you know. So that's why learning idioms is really useful for you. But they are very difficult, right? Because usually the idiom, the words in the phrase, are not directly related to the meaning, right? You know, killing two birds with one stone is not easy to come to the conclusion that it means do one action to achieve two results at the same time. So there's a lot of these expressions that everybody instantly knows, but if you're just hearing it for the first time, you can be proper confused. Like, what are you on about? Killing birds? Why are you killing birds? And stone is not the best way to kill a bird. You know, get a gun or something. But, you know, it can be a bit baffling the first time you hear some of these idioms. But they are really good, right? They are really useful. Now, I'm going to go through a list today of maybe 10 idioms that you'll hear from British people all the time. And some of them you may already know, and some of them you may not already know. Either way, I'm going to show you like what they are and how we use them and what they mean, and give you a bit of background about where they kind of come from. And I will say that not all of these expressions are exclusive to the UK. Americans, Australians, Canadians, whatever other English speakers out there will probably use these or very similar expressions. Some of them are proper British, you know, some of them are very, very British, but there are always variations of these as well in other languages. Like there'll be an American variation of most of these expressions, for example. So they're not exclusive to England, but all British people will know the ones on this list. So if you want to communicate confidently with British people, learning this list is a pretty good idea. So without further ado, No more messing about. Let's jump in to number 10 on the list. And the idiom is to hit the nail on the head. To hit the nail on the head. Now, have you heard this one before? Is it new? I don't know. But to hit the nail on the head is a saying that basically means that you have done something or said something that is exactly right. You've matched my opinion, you've matched my feelings, you've matched my point exactly. It's a perfect match, like the hammer hitting the nail of the head. So, you know, a nail has got the long thin bit and then the round bit that you hit with a hammer. That's the head of a nail, right? And you take a hammer and you hit the nail, and if you hit it perfectly, straight in the wall. Amazing. Perfect. And that's what this idiom means. If you say that to somebody, it means, I totally agree you did that perfectly. I'm 100% on the same wavelength as you. You hit the nail on the head. You know, let's say your mate comes up to you and is like, Dan, I don't get Love Island. I think it's proper crap. And I'm like, mate, you've hit the nail on the head. It is proper rubbish. So I don't even know if Love Island is still a thing. Love Island were a reality TV show years ago where they took like people and put them on an island and they fell in love or something. You know, them crap reality TV shows that happen. But it were rubbish. And if you tell me it's rubbish, I'm going to tell you hit the nail on the head. So yeah, that's a good one. Number 9. Now, this one is kind of useful in English, especially in British English, because maybe you're aware that British people are not very direct when we talk. We're very indirect people. I feel like Americans are quite direct. They'll just tell you what they think, but British people don't do that. We're very indirect when we're asking for something or giving an opinion, because we don't like upsetting people, I guess. But sometimes you just wish, come on, get to the point. Why are you being so indirect? Just say what you mean, right? In that case, you can use this idiom, and it's beat around the bush. Beat around the bush. Now, usually we tell people not to do this or to stop doing this. Stop beating around the bush. Can we stop beating around the bush, please, mate? Let's get to the point. And it basically means that you're purposely avoiding talking about a topic or a subject, right? Usually because it's like embarrassing or it's awkward or for some reason it's not comfortable to talk about that thing. So you kind of hint at it, but you don't really say it, right? That's beating around the bush. And we often like to tell people, stop beating around the bush, get to the point, just say what you mean. And British people need to hear this from time to time, you know? Sometimes you're going to have to tell us to stop beating around the bush. Otherwise, we'll be here all day while you have to try and guess what I'm trying to say. So it's a good one. Another one, there's loads of variations of this one. So number 8 on the list is a sandwich short of a picnic. You usually use this to describe a person, but what kind of person? What kind of person is a sandwich short of a picnic? Well, if you imagine a full picnic, right? That is a normal person's brain. But this person is missing a sandwich. You know, they've lost a sandwich somewhere along the way. They're not playing with a full deck of cards. You know what I'm saying? They're not the sharpest knife in the drawer. You catch my drift? So, yeah, what we're saying is that someone lacks intelligence, or they're not very smart, or they kind of lack common sense. You know, they're a bit dim upstairs. The lights are on, but nobody's really home. You know, we would often say that that person is a sandwich short of a picnic, usually when they do something stupid. You know, I see Dan's lost his keys again. Yeah, he's a sandwich short of a picnic, that lad. It's kind of fun. And if you want to go like the full hog and you want to say that somebody is proper thick, you can flip it round and say that lad is a picnic short of a sandwich. And that just means that they are proper thick, not just a little bit. So it's a good one. It's a good one. Speaking of sandwiches and bread, this next one on the list is to say that something is the best thing since sliced bread. Whatever it is, the smartphone is the best thing since sliced bread. I don't know, I'm looking around on my desk for something that's good. Post-it notes are the best thing since sliced bread. The BritSpeak podcast is the best thing since sliced bread. Thank you very much for saying that. But when we say that something is the best thing since sliced bread, we're saying that it's amazing. It's really good. You know, the person that invented sliced bread, that was an amazing invention. You know, before that, we just had big lumps of bread. We didn't have nice slices. But then somebody came along and they invented sliced bread, and everybody's day were better. And what we're saying is that since then, this is the best invention. So sliced bread was amazing, but then this is like the next best thing. It's amazing. It's so good. It's nearly as good as sliced bread. And I don't know, maybe British people really, really, really like sliced bread, and that's where this one came from. But you will hear it all the time. Basically just saying that something's right good, something's proper good. And yeah, so for example, you might hear something say, oh, that new episode of EastEnders were best thing since sliced bread. Something like that. I don't know if people actually still watch EastEnders, but whatever. It were a fun pop culture reference nonetheless. So yeah, the best thing since sliced bread. Another one, growing up, I didn't understand this idiom at all. I couldn't understand it, but I need to explain a little bit after I've told you what the idiom is. The idiom is that I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. Right, so this needs a bit of explanation. So a barge is kind of like a riverboat. You know, in England, we have these small canals and rivers, and people rent a barge, which is like a long, thin boat that people can go on, right? And you can rent them and you go on a little holiday for some reason. It was popular in the 90s from what I remember. Especially in Norfolk. Norfolk Broads was a popular thing where people would go there on their holiday and rent a barge and just, you know, float down the river for a week or whatever. Anyway, when you have a barge, it comes with like a long stick that you can use to kind of push yourself along the river. If you get stuck or whatever. And that is called a barge pole. And they're pretty long. And what I'm saying is, I wouldn't touch that thing with a barge pole. Can you imagine what that means based on that explanation? Probably not. But basically, if someone or something is proper dodgy, you know, and you should know what dodgy means. If you don't know what it means, go check out the episode about British slang. I think it was episode 003. The link will be in the show notes if you don't know what dodgy means. But if somebody or something is so dodgy that you want absolutely nothing to do with them, the closest you will go is just out of reach of your barge pole, you know? And it basically just means I want nothing to do with that. I want nothing to do with that person. I want nothing to do with that situation. Yeah, I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. The bit that I never understood is, who has a barge pole? Who's just got a barge pole in their house that they're not touching things with? I don't know. Growing up, I just couldn't understand why barge pole. But there you go. It's a good one. It's a good one. So far, we've had hit the nail on the head, saying that you've done something exactly right. We've been beating around the bush, not getting to the point and not being direct. A sandwich short of a picnic. Someone who's a bit thick. The best thing since sliced bread. It's absolutely amazing, mate. And wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. I want nothing to do with it. So that's where we're up to so far. So we're getting to the top 5 on the list now. And number 5 is to bark up the wrong tree. Usually we say it to somebody else. Mate, you're barking up the wrong tree. Now obviously a dog barks, right? That's a dog bark. It weren't real. That was just an impression. I did that. I made that noise. It weren't a real dog while I'm recording this podcast. I know you're surprised. I know. Anyway, so a dog's bark, woof, woof, and they're barking up the tree, but it's the wrong tree. Can you imagine what that means? Well, when you hear this expression, it means that you're looking in the wrong place. You're accusing the wrong person, or you're following a thought that is not the right one. You're heading in the wrong direction, you know, this kind of misguided thought process. It's like, mate, why are you shouting at me? I didn't do it. You're barking up the wrong tree. You've got the wrong person. That kind of expression. Now, I think I read somewhere once that this idiom comes from, like, dogs, right? They chase squirrels and squirrels run up trees. But the dog is barking up the wrong tree. The squirrel's in a different tree, mate. You've got the wrong idea. And that's basically where this one comes from. But we use it all the time to tell people, you've made a mistake, friend. You need to go back to the drawing board, go back to square one, start again, and rethink this situation because you're barking up the wrong tree. So, yeah, good one. Next one I use a lot, and you've probably already heard me say many, many times over on my Instagram. And it's to say that something cost an arm and a leg. You know, it's an arm and a leg. How much did that car cost you, John? An arm and a leg, mate. Oh, fair enough, fair enough. And you can probably guess it means to be very, very expensive. It's proper expensive. But we usually use it when we're being dramatic, you know. When you've just paid £7 for a pint at the pub. You're not used to paying £7 for a pint. You're used to paying £4.50 for a pint. Now, suddenly, we're being dramatic because we paid that extra bit of money for a pint and it cost us an arm and a leg. You know, we're exaggerating. We're being dramatic. British people, we enjoy exaggerating. Just putting that out there. And it reminds me of a joke, one of my favourite jokes. I've told you 1,000,000 times, do not exaggerate. There you go. That's my crap joke for the episode. Anyway, so when British people are exaggerating the cost of something and we're being a bit dramatic, we'll tell you it costs an arm and a leg. And a pint in London will cost you an arm and a leg. Trust me. Trust me on that one. The next one I've got for you today is to say that something is not cricket. You know, cricket is that sport that's proper boring, that takes about 5 days for one game to finish, and they have a tea break halfway through it, and, you know, that whole mess. You might have guessed I'm not a fan of cricket, but for some reason British people quite enjoy cricket. I don't understand. Anyway, if we say that something is not cricket, whatever you're doing over there is not cricket, my friend, then we're telling somebody that something or somebody is acting in a way that's not fair. It's not honest. It's not morally acceptable. You know, whatever you're doing is not really up to social standards, my friend. It's not really acceptable. It's just not cricket. Cricket is acceptable. Whatever you're doing is not acceptable. So give over. Stop it. Just give it a rest, will you? Stop whatever you're doing. It's just not cricket. Good. Another one. Have you ever had that situation where you're talking about somebody who's not there? You know, it's me and you, and we're talking about Steve, right? We're saying, Steve's a bit of a dickhead, and he always does me head in. Then next minute, Steve comes into the room. Ooh, we didn't expect you to show up, Steve. We have an expression we'd use in this situation. We're talking about Steve, and Steve walks through the door, and I'd be like, oh, speak of the devil. Speak of the devil. This means that the person you are talking about, who is not there, arrives almost at the perfect moment. They arrive on cue, as if they knew that we were talking about him. Steve could feel in the force somehow that we were talking about him, and he showed up just as we were talking about him. Speak of the devil. I don't really know where this one comes from. Probably Bible things. If you talk about the devil, he'll show up to your house or something. I don't know, but that's when we use it, when we're talking about somebody who's not there, and then they arrive almost at the perfect time. Speak of the devil. Now, the last one I mentioned right at the beginning of the episode, and maybe you've heard this one before, but you might be aware that British people, we enjoy a cup of tea. You know, most British people love a cup of tea. Not me. I mentioned it earlier. I'm a coffee guy. Don't really care about tea, but tea is serious business in English, right? And you'll hear the expression sometimes, it's not my cup of tea. It is not my cup of tea. My cup of tea is there. Whatever you're talking about is not my cup of tea. Now, we're not actually talking about tea when we use this expression. It's nothing to do with tea. What we're saying is that we don't like something. We're not fond of it. It's not really my thing. I'm not a fan. For example, cricket. Cricket is not my cup of tea. You know, I don't like it. I don't get it. It's not my cup of tea. So there you go. That's another great idiom that you can use and you will hear all the time from British people. So there, 10 idioms that British people use all the time. Be sure to write them down, give them a go, and I'm sure you'll be able to use them in conversations and impress your British mates. Don't forget to subscribe to the BritSpeakPod. That's britspeak.co/BritSpeakPod. Thanks for your time today. Have a good week, and I'll see you in the next one. See you.